I see your pretty faces and I taste them.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Welcome to Derry, which is a new streaming series that just wrapped up its first season on HBO. I want to share some of my thoughts about the show as well as some predictions for future seasons because it's probably going to get picked up at least for 2 more. Also want to go over where I think this show began in pop culture and how it was possible for it to be as good as it is. Before we jump into talking about Welcome to Derry and some of my other ideas, I do want to drop a spoiler warning. So I am going to talk about the finale. So if you haven't seen it yet, pause this video, go watch it, and then I'll tell you how to feel about it. It does have some flaws, so we'll just go ahead and start there. I think that there's way too much CGI. I understand that Andy Muschietti and the entire team have a very practical mindset when it comes to adding those effects in. It just doesn't always look as good as the clown makeup does for Bill Skarsgård and the kind of performance that he puts in. His screen presence is just so naturally frightening and intimidating that when you place these CGI masks over the clown's makeup, it just kind of takes you out of it. I know that this creature is a shape-shifting monster and it's a godlike deity. It can kind of operate how it wants to. So I know that they've been given a kind of impossible task for creating a monster like this on screen. There is still a very tactile quality to the CGI. It works. It feels like it's real to the world. It doesn't always feel like that, but I think that it manages to be believable. I think the show suffers from a lot of kind of needless exposition, and audiences like exposition. We like to feel that there's some lore building going on and to understand what is about to be laid out in front of us. My qualm with it is that some of the exposition in this show was boring. I think it came down a lot to the writing, and I think they were trying to do way too much. They were trying to do way too much connective tissue with like Margie Tozier and Richie Tozier and kind of connecting it to the future iteration of the Losers Club that would defeat it. Overall, the finale works really well, and the final set piece on the river with the snow and the wind is eerie and effective, and the intro of the episode's so good that I was a little let down that the rest of it wasn't as good as that, where Pennywise is officially let out of his cage at the end of episode 7 and able to just draw all these children under his spell, and he essentially unalives an entire freshman class in high school. He shows them the deadlights and they're just floating through the air in a set piece that just feels ripped straight out of like Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the intro from that where Patricia Arquette's character is having a nightmare. So there's a lot of kind of horror iconography in this show. I think that Andy and that entire team are really trying to pay homage and create something new and unique. And I think that's what has been another great triumph of this show, is that it's interesting. It's not always good. It's not usually bad. It is sometimes very stupid. When the show is trying too hard to make you feel like it's real is where it starts to wane and I lost interest. The whole thing where they're trying to get the dagger back into the dead tree across the river so they can keep it caged. I just don't buy that there weren't more military people there seeing those kids walk across the ice, but that's okay. I'll suspend disbelief. I'll just let it happen because we get some moving and emotional stuff, and a lot of these characters I loved. Leroy, Dick, Hank Grogan, Charlotte, all the kids that survived. I was glad that a lot of these people survived. It does leave a lot of questions for what's next. That's kind of what's exciting, is they set up so many ideas for spinoffs. And given that TV largely these days it's always a mini series or like Task. Season 1 was really good. That was probably my favorite TV show of this year. They did that anthology format and they're doing another season. I don't really know if it'll be as good as the first one, but TV shows are being made with that kind of limited approach, which is really interesting to take into consideration when you're thinking back on the 1990s adaptation, which was a TV miniseries. It was cut up into 2 parts. It's fascinating that we're 30 or 40 years in the future here and another TV series about it has come out and is widely successful and widely liked by audiences. You know, I mentioned earlier about how this is a very interesting show, and it is. If you're only going to get AI slop out there, that's the only sure shot that a studio will make. This is a good property to do it with. If you look back at the 2010s when Haunting of Hill House and Mike Flanagan were becoming prominent, and then you fast forward to Brian Fuller's Hannibal, then you see that there's somebody who worked on Hannibal, one Don Mancini. And that's right, folks. I was not going to end the year without putting out another Chucky themed video, so to speak, because Welcome to Derry is directly influenced by shows like Chucky. And there's really only one show like Chucky. It's a comedy, but it's also pretty scary. and it has a lot of great kill sequences. It's got a great sense of humor, and it recontextualizes a character that had existed for 20 or 30 years up to the point of the show. But what Chucky did so well is you made this kind of cantankerous but humorous serial killer character who's also a doll. You made him a little bit more grounded and relatable, and he still does some crazy things like try to blow up the North Pole. He like blows some people up with a grenade, and it's a pretty gruesome, dark show. When you look at what Welcome to Derry is doing, you see a show that is very much in conversation with how do we make a slasher TV series. And I know that there's The Walking Dead, and there's that show there was like Room 101, and then Creep now is becoming a TV series, the excellent Mark Duplass movies. That's just to say that I think horror TV is becoming a bigger entity. I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think we are more than ever bombarded in our social media feeds by cartoonish violence. And if you look at a lot of the horror icons from the last 30 or 40 years, you get Jason Voorhees, can't kill him, comes back to life, like laughably powerful. Freddy Krueger attacks you in your nightmares, has a lot of cheekiness to him, a lot of personality, but very evil. Then you got people like Art the Clown now, who's a more modern slasher entity. I bring all this up because violence from American media and in American horror movies is endless, ongoing, and you can't help but laugh at it. In Welcome to Derry, when Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise utters things like, "Oh, whoopsie, I've got face on my face," you have to chuckle to yourself because he is such a frightening presence. Where America is right now and where the world is right now, it makes sense that horror is becoming a marketable franchise for TV. What makes Chucky stand out in 2025, the show and the character, is that he was noticeably queer. He himself wasn't, but his children are queer, and he embraced them despite being an evil serial killer. And it brought this kind of newness to Chucky. He became even more of an icon, and he could be championed by this audience who already is being oppressed and ostracized in our culture generally. It's exciting to see a character like that can get revived and continue to come back, which is what a slasher does. You see that same kind of thing going on with Welcome to Derry, and the way it is actively in conversation with newer movies like Ryan Coogler's Sinners and Zach Cregger's Weapons, just as much as it's communicating with Damon Lindelof's excellent adaptation of Watchmen from 2019. There's a lot of race, politics, they bring in native people in Welcome to Derry. The way that the show is interacting with these very real-life topics is fascinating to watch, because the fact that he shows up at the black spot while a group of white supremacists is massacring a group of people who were just trying to find a place to be able to freely express themselves, and also shield someone who was in danger of being wrongfully lynched. And these are all things that are still happening in 2025. And the way that the clown takes on this evil and feeds off the fear and allows that evil to persist, it is gut-wrenching in those scenes. I hadn't really been moved emotionally by the show too much. That scene with Richie and Marge, it hit me. Not only that, but all of the black men and women and people and children stuck in there, and the way these guys could just do this kind of evil, having this silly slasher clown, so to speak, on the periphery feeding and taking advantage of that, it makes that character even more powerful and frightening. It's interesting to see where we're at with horror TV, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. To go back to the weapons point, I think it's very important to have a red-haired villain like Aunt Gladys from Weapons be prominent in a major franchise TV show like this. Probably because the leader of America is kind of a cartoonish clown himself. A very evil one who would be willing to say some nasty things about someone who just got unalived within hours. You can see this very evil just constantly around us. So I'm kind of trying to figure out, why is it becoming popular now? A strange thing happening in America right now where the media we're consuming is so immediate and in conversation with what kind of trauma we're all processing, that it's refreshing and it's comforting, even though it really goes the distance with its violence and it's unrelenting. I'm really excited for the prospect of this. I don't have any hopes that this means that the Chucky TV show might get revived. I hope something Chucky related happens. I don't think Welcome to Derry exists without the Chucky TV series success, because to be able to create an episodic season, 3 seasons, about a serial killer, my first idea would just be like, who does he kill every episode? But the fact that they were able to carry that over the span of a season really has promise for shows like the new Nightmare on Elm Street series that's being produced. I think that's going to be on Netflix. Camp Crystal Lake, which is the Jason Voorhees show with Linda Cardellini attached to it, apparently. If I'm not mistaken, the guy working on this show is working on the new Camp Crystal Lake show. This could be very promising for these showrunners who want to make more horror TV shows. And of course, my beloved Halloween franchise, I think there is built-in potential for a TV series there. Welcome to Derry is kind of becoming the standard for this. There's going to be a lot of arguments out there that there's better TV shows or better horror TV shows than Welcome to Derry. I'm not arguing with you there. But what I am saying is it is an interesting piece of media in an evergreen field of television. I'm really excited for what's going to come in the future of horror TV. Even if you didn't like all of Welcome to Derry, at the very least, you have to admit that it was fun a lot of the time. It's fun to be scared. Maybe that's part of the fascination. Something that's almost intangible like Pennywise, there's something you can rally behind. I'm curious to know what your all's thoughts are on Welcome to Derry, and if you've seen Chucky, you know, I'd love to hear what you think about maybe how those two shows are in conversation. Leave some comments below, and you know, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing if this show gets renewed for a second and third season, and until next time, we all float down here.